Hello and welcome back to another episode of AI Frontiers, where we bring you conversations with the people currently working at the far edges of artificial intelligence. Today's episode features a conversation with Guohao Li. He's a postdoc researcher at the University of Oxford, and he's also one of the creators of CAMEL-AI. CAMEL is a framework for creating AI agents in multi-agent systems, and it's also an open source community where people build and develop with this technology. Before we get into today's episode, I want to take a moment to tell you a little bit about Valory. Valory is the premier creator of open source frameworks for co-owned AI. It's our mission to empower communities, organizations, and even countries to co-own the AI systems of the future. It's our belief that artificial general intelligence will likely be agentic and therefore must be co-owned. We felt that this was an important moment to collect and share a broad range of perspectives from people currently working in the space. Just one note about today's episode. Towards the end, we had a technical difficulty and Guohao rejoins the call with slightly different audio and, for those watching, a different video aspect ratio. So, without any further ado, here's my conversation with Guohao Li.
So it's really great to have you with us and start the conversation like I've started all of them so far with. I'll ask you to tell me your name and what you're currently working on.
Yeah, so very great talking to you. So my name is Guohao Li. I'm now a postdoc researcher at the University of Oxford. I'm also working on an open source project called CAMEL. We are building an open source community called CAMEL-AI.
So I think a great place to start then is to define our terms. And I'd like to know, how do you currently define an AI agent?
Good question. I guess there are many AI agents come from many different literature and definition. There is not a unified definition. But at the current stage, people usually define agent as a language model agent. So basically have this maybe one of the most famous definitions, agent has the ability to use tools, agent have ability to have the memory ability, agent have the planning ability. But I guess something missing, in the previous definition is that the agent will need to learn how to communicate with each other, how they can convey their intention, how they can understand others' intention, and how can they collaborate together. This is exactly what we are building in CAMEL.
Cool. Yeah, that's an interesting answer. That ability to communicate and pause is quite different, and I really appreciate including that in the definition. To maybe bring a little more clarity, could you provide an example of something that you would consider an AI agent, and then contrast it with a program that you wouldn't consider an AI agent?
One of the most important parts of the program that can define as AI agent is that it can understand a different kind of instruction. So basically, the program can understand the environment and instruction given to the AI agent. Let me think example that let's say a couple of days ago we was in a hackathon that we do an agent that can take as input a pull request and then make it as a tweet post. This is an AI agent because it can understand different type of input, the pull request as input, and post it as a tweet corresponding to the contents of the pull request. This is the AI agent because it can understand the variance in the inputs, which can be different type of pull requests and output the post. This can be also done by maybe a bot that can maybe help you to send a tweet, but it cannot generate the input and output. We add a different kind of instruction and environment. I don't know if this is a good answer. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is. I think that's a pretty clear difference. In the past, I've often heard people point out the ability to taking sort of plain instructions that don't specify how to act in an environment and then finishing it anyway, which is not something that you can do with other types of like a bot.
Yeah, maybe I think there is a better example is AI agent. Usually you don't need to write down all those rules like if else, if else, if else for all the condition, for all the different type of input. Instead, they can understand the input and act by themselves. Yeah.
Great. Now that we've defined our terms and we know what we're talking about, or we know what we mean by these words, it would be great to know a little bit about your journey into the field. How did you get into AI in the first place?
Oh, that was a very long time ago. During my master, I guess 7 years ago or something. At that time, basically, DeepMind, they released the AlphaGo, the project that use AI agent to play Go. So yeah, that AlphaGo, that the AI agent to play in AlphaGo is like quite different from the current agent that we are using. But yeah, at that time I see like that was a very amazing project. Very want to get into the field to learn how to build agent. Yeah, this was the starting point of my journey.
Yeah, AlphaGo is fascinating, especially because after it was released, the level of Go that people play is like much higher because it forced the whole like game forward. I thought it was really interesting. But anyway, great. So that's very cool to hear what got you into it. When you first started working with AI agents on their own, were there any moments that really struck you or stood out as a sign that you were onto something really interesting?
So I have been like doing AI for a very long time, from my master to PhD. So at the beginning of my PhD, I was working on reinforcement learning agent. Yeah, just like what I mentioned, I was amazed by the AlphaGo project from DeepMind. I really like the idea of reinforcement learning. I apply AI agent, reinforcement learning agent, to like robotics application, like flying the UAV, autonomous train car, and something. Yeah, but it was quite struggle to get them work, and especially it's very difficult to let them to generalize to different tasks, even like different scenario. It's impossible to generate across environments at that time. So yeah, I was like start working on like building agent for some time and move to the space of building architecture, fundamental architecture that can revolutionize the representation learning. At that time, I was looking into graph neural network, which was considered as one of the most promising architecture. Yeah, I was working on that for my whole PhD, basically. After I graduated from my PhD, I saw the release of ChatGPT from OpenAI. This is my first time that see how powerful is a language model. So I decided to completely shifted my research from graph network back to the AI agent space. But now, with the new foundation model, we can build a language model agent, which can really understand the environments and generalize across environments and across tasks. Yeah, basically that is how my experience on AI agents.
Yeah, that's a great answer, because it also sort of answers my next question, which is usually like, what brought you to AI agents specifically? So you've just kind of told that story. So it might be good then to know what you're working on right now and how AI agents like are incorporated into it, or since it's a very big focus of what you're doing, maybe you can take that question in whatever direction you'd like to. If there's something new that you're working on lately or an area that you're trying to push forward, it would be great to hear about that.
Yeah, so we are building an open source community called CAMEL-AI. Basically, we are working on different type of topic around AI agent. The first project we built was a multi-agent framework that we use for task automation and also data generation. So basically, we build a multi-agent system. They collaborate on tackling some task and then generate some instruction, fine-tuning data. I guess Camel is the first multi-agent framework based on language model agent. We built it like a year ago. At the same time, with AutoGPT and Baby AGI, those projects, our genomic data was used by many popular model, I guess. On Hanging Face, there are like more than 150 model, they use our data. Maybe probably some of the most popular one, like the NTT model from Mosaic ML that was acquired by Databricks, and also the Open Hermes model by News Research, and also the N4 model by Hanging Face, I guess. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, for sure. The Open Hermes model is one of the models that our prediction agents call. It does pretty well on prediction. So yeah, a lot of those are familiar to me. Cool. It's very interesting to hear you mention multi-agent systems. And for people who are maybe familiar with the idea of an AI agent, could you help them understand how a multi-agent system might improve on the efficacy or deliver benefits that a single agent system couldn't?
Yeah, by nature, uh, human society is a multi-agent system. So what we can benefit from building a multi-agent system is, I guess, is the philosophy of the programming. We can learn a lot from how human society work, like how humans collaborate with each other. Basically, we break down the task. Everyone can have their specialized skills. People collaborate together. Sometimes in some scenario, maybe not only collaboration, people also maybe compete with each other so that the whole system can evolve. I guess the same idea apply to multi-agent system as well. This is one aspect that why building a multi-agent system could be beneficial than a single agent, because we can just learn so many knowledge from how human society work. Sometimes I call this as inductive bias from human society. So it basically inspired by human society to build multi-agent system. And the other benefit, I think, is like divide and conquer. So if you know this is a very typical algorithm in computer science, we can divide the task, and this can lead to a better efficiency, better less complexity. I guess this is also the same for multi-agent system. Training a universal model seems to be make sense, but this might be just too complicated as the tasks become more and more complicated. Why not we just break down the task? If we can build specialized agent on different things, and you have a way to let them collaborate, this will just reduce the complexity by vastly.
Yeah, I think all of that makes a ton of sense. Maybe I think that does actually lead on quite nicely into what it's like to build an AI agent for a tool or a purpose. And from the design perspective, are there elements that you find significantly impact the effectiveness of an AI agent?
I guess there are many elements that can significantly impact the effectiveness of AI agent. First of all, the very important is how you prompt the agent, how you prompt the agent to do things, including the formats that the agent reply and how you let the agent to act in a way. So yeah, this is very important. Other than that, of course, the memory, the tool usage, like of course, very important. Especially for building a multi-agent system, very important is you can consider as the protocol of communication. How should the agent talk to each other? how should they know like who they are talking to? This is very important.
Yeah, definitely. So they need good instructions, and then yeah, to be equipped to be untrusted, basically.
Yeah. They need to given very good instruction. They need to equip with very good tools, and they need to have a good knowledge base, and they need to understand the environments and other agents who they are talking to, and how should they communicate in maybe protocol or something, agreement or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like designing them as a holistic system and thinking of all of the different inputs and outputs at the same time. Interesting. I'll shift now to talk a little bit about like the current state of the field and progress that's being made. In terms of like autonomy, AI agents that can run themselves and function or perform their function autonomously, have we as an industry, or have you specifically managed to create something that you would consider truly autonomous? And if not, what elements do you think we're missing to get there?
Yes, in lots of our previous exploration, we focusing on like synthetic data generation. We find a way to define the roles of those agents and define the tasks of those agents. All these roles and tasks are generated by a language model agent. Basically, everything, all the data are generated by agent, so it's fully automated. The only input we give to the agent is the initial instruction. So this I think is a very automated it's a very automated system. They can generate data. We successfully generate, I don't remember the number, but yeah, lots of data, like roles with another 50 roles on 10 tasks. Basically, this number you can scale up further. But also, I find that by letting those agents collaborate autonomously, some challenge is that sometimes they just forgot their roles, or they flip the roles when the context conversation becomes very long, or there are some some tasks the agent cannot perform with the given environment or given tools. Yeah, this is quite challenging. I will give you an example. Let's say if you ask two agents to help you to book a restaurant, we can use this scenario to generate data, but you really need to give the agent that will require information. For example, if you don't let the agent to know where is the location, maybe how to maybe send an email to book a restaurant, or how to use a phone call to book a restaurant, the agent just cannot perform this task. And the generation sometimes becomes becomes hallucination. Yeah, this is one of the use case I can think of.
A lot of the things that you've mentioned lead towards training and improving the ability of, for example, an agent to do its job. In the field of artificial intelligence more generally, we're hearing a lot about the idea of self-improving AIs, but how far do you think we are on that path, and what steps might lie ahead of us?
Yeah, I guess from the agent perspective, I guess so there was like improving AI, reinforcement learning agent. If you can have a way to redefine the reward function for the agents, the agent can actually interact with the environments. By the environment feedback, the agent can actually improve their policy. But for language model agent, now I guess something we are still missing is the learning part, how to reinforce the agent by the interaction with the environment. But also, this is just an open problem because it's just so difficult to define the reward function for a very complicated agent, very complicated task environments. So that, yeah, they are not there yet. Sometimes I guess we use humans as a reward function. That's how we call like reinforcement learning from human feedback. People also exploring like reinforcement learning from AI feedback. If you really make a like autonomous system that like work by learning from AI feedback, then yeah, you got a self-improved autonomous system. I mentioned one of the potential of multi-agent system is that they can evolve, not just collaborate with each other, they also compete with each other. They maybe can evolve like a population, and then they will have like becoming better and better as the whole system interact with environments. They will become like you can get a better agent from the revolution, and then they can maybe populate the population and to generate and the next generation of agents and becoming better and better. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, it's almost like speciation, or developing specialties, and then eventually, if, yeah, as you said in the beginning, if you have good communication between agents and you do have high quality speciation, that makes a ton of sense, and I can imagine that also scaling quite well with the larger this ecosystem gets, the more effective it might be. Cool. In terms of capabilities for AI agents, what ability do you think they might unlock next that could really move them as a category forward?
Yeah, I guess one of the ability is the agent can use tool that is where unlock lots of potential. But currently, I see two limitations for agent use tool. The first limitation is that most of the tools, they are built for human or built for like human programmers. We really need to define how to build a better tool for agents. Maybe in the future, there will be more and more tools that just created dedicated for the agent instead for human. And also, as a human, we build tools for ourselves, right? So we are a creator of tools. But for agents now, they rely on human to build the tools. I envision in the future, the agent will have the ability to create their own tools based on their intention. Like they want to get something done. Maybe they first need to think about what tools to be used. If there are not existing tools, maybe they need to learn how to make the tools. Maybe it could be done by generating codes or combine the existing tools or other way. I don't know yet. Yeah, but I really think the tool usage is one of the core capability that unlock so many potential. Of course, if you have all those agents that can use tools, create tools, and then they collaborate together as a multi-agent system, that will just become so powerful.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have any predictions for the near-term future of AI agents or AI more generally? Something that you feel quite confident is coming soon, and yeah.
Yeah, I think we already see many progress in the multimodality recently. The GPT-4o can understand video, can understand audio as input. So yeah, we will see like many agents will have the ability to understand the word better because they are multimodality. And in the near terms, I will say because the agent can really understand the environments better with those multimodality as inputs. I think in the near term, maybe two things will become possible, or I want it to become like more stable or possible. So the first thing is still the agent. How can agent self improve by learning through the interaction with the environment? Because now agents are multimodal agents, they can understand the environments better. So I think that will also lead to better learnings through the environment, with the environment, and also the multi-agent system as well. We are building multi-agent system. I also see other people are building multi-agent system, but to be honest, they are not production ready yet. In many use cases, we cannot scale up to large multi-agent system, but now the agent have the ability to unify the foundation model, have the ability to unify all those modality. This will just become more feasible because the agent, they can understand each other better. Now the model unify all the modalities, so you are not just a language model that using like maybe a vision model, but they become the whole parts of the agent. So I guess with this to be possible, the communication amongst agent becomes more powerful. So I think like a multi-agent system that can really understand each other becomes true in the near future.
Great. Yeah, I can see that making a huge difference for efficacy and yeah, things you could use it for. I wonder also with the ability to take multimodal input and potentially use that for training, there are things that only exist in audio form, for example. And right now, with language models biased towards language, they often take things and turn them into text, or they look for text first. But yeah, being able to take new inputs in one model without having to, you're right. That's both something that we've seen a large step forward quite recently, and yeah, I can see how it naturally leads into some interesting areas.
Yeah. Because most of the data for the language model that trained on was the internet data of maybe the text, the image data. But maybe with the recent progress in mobile and video streaming, there are just so many video data that under ISPO. People create like so many tutorials on things and things, and also you creating interviews and things on the internet. And all those data, all those valuable data, they are in the form of video. Previously, the agent cannot utilize those data, cannot really learn from those data. But now with the ability of understand video and audios, all this will become possible. So I don't have an exact number, but if you look at the size of the video data in the internet, the portion of the video data, that is a huge amount of data compared to the pure text data. So the ability to understand video and audio input just unlock the potential of the agent learning from all those unexplored data sources. Yeah.
Yeah, it's massive, and yeah, just what you're saying makes me even realize that even video, it's actually all three of them, because if the speech to text tool that it has is good enough, and you have what's on screen visually and with good vision, you're getting three different inputs, but actually they kind of add up to something greater than themselves in terms of if you're asking it to, I don't know, learn how to do something or to determine its own pathway from available resources. Like, yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there that they don't have access to just yet, but yeah, that's great. So as we get towards the end here, one thing that I've been asking all of my guests is if they have reading recommendations or resources that they often recommend to people who are interested in learning more about AI agents and don't know where to start.
Yeah, I really like one book that inspired me a lot on building multi-agent system. It's a very old book by Marvin Minsky. It's called The Society of Mind. That is a book that tries to understand human intelligence. Basically, the whole idea is of the book is that we try to understand human intelligence by introducing the term of AI agent. So basically, in the book that Minsky mentioned, the intelligence is from the diversity of the agents. So each single agent, they can only do a very simple task. But if you join all those agents into a society, this leads to the true intelligence. So this is the whole idea. So we as a human, we have many agents inside our brain. And all those agents, they can just do simple things, like maybe open the door or pick up an apple or something. But if you have all those small agents, combine them together, you lead to the intelligence of a human. This is the whole idea of the book. Try to understand where its intelligence come from. I think it's a very old book, but I really recommend the Asian learner to read it as a as a fun reading. Maybe it doesn't help you much on actually understand language model agent technique, but it's just a very good reading for understanding human intelligence and AI agent. I guess, yeah, I encourage everyone to read it. Yeah.
Nice, that's great. I really like that recommendation. Cool. So if you'd like to maybe take a moment to encourage people to do something specific with Camel, or there's something that you think is really exciting, yeah, I'd love to give you the opportunity to put that call to action out now.
Oh yeah, as I mentioned, Camel is an open source community. We do open source project. We also do open source research as well. We have amazing researchers from different institutes. We collaborate on building things. Sometimes we build it as an open source project. Sometimes we also publish a research paper on the projects that we are working on. I think for the CAMEL framework, one of the most useful case is for building multi-agent system. Probably you know the other multi-agent projects, maybe like ChatDev. They use CAMEL as a foundation to build their projects. And also CAMEL is very good. It's very good at generating data, synthetic data. Many open source models use our data, but I don't see many people are using it for generating more data. It's actually a pity. I guess there are just so many potential on using multi-agent for synthetic data generation. Thus, you can see the successful use case for the OpenHermes model and NPT-30B chat model. I really want to see more people working on generating data with a multi-agent system. That's what I encourage everyone to look into. Maybe Camel can do that for you.
Nice, great. So where could people keep up with you specifically and your work in general?
Oh yeah. I'm available on Twitter, yeah, and also you can go to my personal homepage for emails and LinkedIn and so on. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I want to thank you for taking the time to talk with me. It's been a very interesting conversation. I think people are going to get a lot out of it.
Great. Very great talking to you.
Yeah, cool. Have a good one.
All right, that is it for this episode of AI Frontiers. To learn more about Guohao's work, you can check out his website, ghli.org. We've also got links to Camel, some of the other resources he mentioned in the description box of this video or in the show notes if you're listening to the podcast. To learn more about Valory, you can check out our website, valory.xyz, learn more about how to build your own decentralized AI agents, our open source framework for co-owned AI, and much more. You can also follow us on X, where we are at ValoryAG. All right, until next time.